Prime Minister Christie and his delegation touches down in Havana, Cuba, ahead of regional talks on relations between Cuba, the world, and the Bahamas. I'm Clint Watson. The stories ahead. The Bahamas Tonight Weekend Edition.
The Royal Bahamas Police Force mounts one of its largest operations for the year. I'm Altaviz Munnings. I'll have all the details coming up in the Bahamas Tonight, the Weekend Edition.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Everyday.
Good evening, everyone. I'm LaDawn Davis, and welcome to the Bahamas Tonight, the Weekend Edition. Thanks so much for tuning in. Topping the news tonight, the increased scrutiny of immigration operations over the past month due to the new immigration policy and the assault of an officer and damage to a police vehicle last week has prompted Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell to clear the air about the manner in which those immigration checks are being carried out. At a press conference today, Minister Mitchell told reporters that these exercises are nothing new and have been going on long before he became minister responsible for immigration. Answering critics of the new immigration policy, Minister Mitchell said all complaints, including that about an individual abandoning his children who were later placed at the detention center, are being investigated. He added that up to November 1st, more than 3,400 were repatriated, most of them Haitians. Those exercises continue Tuesday when 228 Haitians, including children, will be repatriated. This as many undocumented persons still seek to enter the Bahamas.
But that, in my view, largely is driven by the fact of the actual breaching of the borders at sea. Because if you remember, in the first quarter of the year, we'd already doubled where we were the previous year. So we'd have to disaggregate the actual land-based interdictions. But certainly the sea-based interdictions are way up over last year, no question about that. And that's across the region.
He defended the work of immigration officers in apprehending suspected illegal migrants.
If there is a reasonable suspicion that someone has committed an offense, is about to commit an offense, or is committing an offense, the immigration officer is legally empowered to take action.
Mr. Mitchell says officers are briefed regularly on responsibilities and standards they must adhere to while conducting routine checks. That standard, he says, has not been violated despite alleged reports of abuse by officers towards migrants.
Recall that a woman claiming that she'd been abused came to the office last week on Thursday, the 4th of December, but left before her complaint could be addressed. She is welcome to return, again, if she believes that her complaint was not addressed, but at this point, the evidence is that her version of the facts does not match the records of the department. The complaint by Fred Smith QC was reported in the press. The report of Mr. Smith does not match the evidence which is available to the department. In fact, the incident which he describes may have jeopardized the safety of an immigration operation.
Mitchell says the department is now looking at the possibility of installing cameras in the transporting buses. While answering the question about the fact that some officers are armed, Mitchell also gave an update on immigration checks in Abaco.
What is coming up in Abaco is that the evidence leads us to believe that the smugglers see Abaco as a soft target because they believe that we don't have the defenses that, say, we have in New Providence, or even Exuma for that matter. And so they've been picking places like Sandy Point, or they'll pick a place up north where they believe the defenses aren't there. And the idea is to just go and melt into the community.
Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie addressed Cubans on live TV today, moments after he arrived in the capital Havana for the Cuba-Caribbean Leaders' Second Regional Summit for the year. The Cuban reception for the Bahamian delegation, which includes Ministers Ryan Pinder and Kaylis Rowe, was fitting as next month Prime Minister Christie assumes leadership of the CARICOM Leaders Association. Clint Watson reports tonight from Havana.
It was a ceremony with all of the pomp and pageantry attached to it as Prime Minister Honorable Perry Christie and his ministerial delegation arrived here in Havana, Cuba on Sunday afternoon, ready to discuss the region, the Bahamas, and Cuba relations.
Presenten! anonymous.
Regional leaders believe CARICOM and Cuba have always been able to overcome challenges. In fact, 41 years of diplomatic relations have been fruitful, particularly through many areas of particular interest, something Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie mentioned when he touched down in Havana.
It is important for us to recognize the significant contribution that the Republic of Cuba has made not only to the Bahamas, but also to the region. For the Bahamas specifically, we have had a significant contribution in the field of education, healthcare, and we look forward to continuing our relations with Cuba as a very close neighbor, and all of the collaboration that we have strengthened and we will continue to work on. And the one final point I would make is that we must improve the trade relations between Cuba and the Bahamas.
Now the delegation will be immersed immediately into the discussions. They head now to the National Hotel, where they of course go into an evening working session dinner. Of course, tomorrow will be a full day of discussion and talks and planning, and that will be concluded with an official dinner. The delegation heads back to the capital on Tuesday morning. In Havana, Cuba, Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Police here in New Providence remain resolute in their commitment to keep residents safe, and despite the seemingly endless assault by the criminal element, with the murder count at 114 for the year, the police are now on the offensive with all levels of officers out on the streets fighting crime. Altavis Munnings accompanied police last night as they conducted one of their biggest operations for the year.
It was shortly after 7 o'clock Saturday night when the Royal Bahamas Police Force mounted one of its largest operations for the year. A large convoy of police vehicles left the force's East Street headquarters, all in an effort to stamp out crime this weekend. Our first stop was near the intersection of East Street and Fritz Lane when officers stopped every vehicle. One driver even had to be searched. All of this resulted in persons being arrested for outstanding warrants and other traffic violations. From there, we traveled further south to the intersection of East Street and Cordo Avenue, where even more traffic violators were stopped. Senior Assistant Police Commissioner Leon Bethel didn't mince words or reveal any intelligence regarding the operation's mandate of maintaining law and order this holiday season.
If you're on bail for murder and rape and armed robbery and we find you, we know that you use a firearm for the commission of the offense that you came out of prison for. We're going after you. We're going to search you. We're going to pick you up and we're going to take you and search all of the associates that you have to see if we can find the guns that you have. We are not just looking at the males. We're looking at the females who may be given a gun to hold when the police come to search, or be given drugs, or be given some stolen property to hold.
Police then took the press southeast to Nassau Village, where officer in charge of the Firearms Tracing and Investigations Unit, Chief Superintendent Ken Strawn, explained what led to the arrest of two men on Taylor Street.
Stuck within the guts of this vehicle, we recovered a .40 pistol loaded with ammunition. And I believe tonight is a good example of our efforts. We probably averted a homicide or some serious injury to some other member of the public.
We also saw the remnants of an accident near the Carmichael and Blue Hill Roads intersection that involved two Honda vehicles. Debris and car parts were sprinkled on the ground, the wall was damaged, and one man taken into custody. Simultaneously, Drug Enforcement Unit officers nabbed 3 suspects who are known to police for violating their ankle monitoring bracelet conditions.
They were basically in one particular area. That is an area of concern for us. Even more of the concern when we actually observe persons of that kind of criminal character congregating, and we know that more than likely they are planning and scheming to do some other form of crime.
And you've probably heard police in recent days warning nightclub owners to maintain peace. Well, detectives went to an establishment in Western New Providence where they had to enforce this policy.
We have had some major crimes reported in the recent weeks, but we still have charged the law-abiding persons in this country, and we invite persons and encourage them who have information on these latest crimes and all crimes to reach out to us.
Authorities want all residents of New Providence to understand that Saturday's operation is not the only time they will be out in full force. Police will continue to comb the island of New Providence well into 2015, all to ensure that the criminal element remains at a minimum. Altavis Munnings, ZNS Network News.
And despite the increased presence of police on our streets, there were 2 shooting incidents during the wee hours this morning. In the first incident around 1 a.m., 2 men were walking on Minnie Street and Cordo Avenue when 3 men armed with handguns robbed them of cash and a cell phone. The assailants shot the 2 men in their legs before fleeing on foot. They're listed in stable condition at the Princess Margaret Hospital. And just after 3 a.m., police say a woman was on Ferguson Street and Dumping Ground Corner, Baintown, where she was shot in the right arm. She is also listed in stable condition. Police are actively investigating both incidents. We've got more news on the other side of the break.